Okay, good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday night, so it's halacha and Tanya. Last time we were learning the dinim of Mezuzah, and we said, as far as every every room in the house needs a Mezuzah. If a room is 6 feet by 6 feet, then it would need a Mezuzah. Less than 6 feet by 6 feet, it wouldn't need a Mezuzah. We're discussing that any doorway that has two posts. It has two posts and a lentil on top, needs a mezuzah. If you have two doorposts, no lentil on top, like many gates in people's homes, that the gates don't have a lentil on top, so then you don't need a mezuzah. But again, to go into all the complicated dinim of mezuzah, and we said last time, it's always good to bring somebody to your house that knows the dinim of mezuzah to figure out where the mezuzah should go. I just want to say, though, that according to Chabad custom, again, we're continuing now, Mezuzah, but according to Chabad custom, besides the front door, as we mentioned last week, any door that has a door that swings the way it opened, not a swinging door, a sliding door, I mean. If you have a door that opens into a room, then you put on the right side going into the room. If it opens on the right side going out of the room, you put it on the right side going out of the room, providing there's a window or balcony or somewhere, even though it's complicated, that you'd be able to get in with that doorway. Now, I haven't seen it in California, but like if you ever go down Kingston Avenue, in front of the stores, they have these horizontal doors on the ground, on the sidewalk, that you open them up and you go down to the cellar where they store things, whatever. Now, horizontal doors that are actually horizontal don't need mezuzahs. If it's a little bit at an angle, not exactly laying flat on the ground, then you should put up without a bracha. It's an interesting scenario. Again, I haven't seen them in California, at least in LA. I haven't seen them too much, but I'm sure they exist. Okay, now the mezuzah. Okay, where do you put the mezuzah on the doorpost? Which part of it? So let me say there's a very interesting argument between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. You ever notice when people put up mezuzahs, they put them at an angle, at a slant. Sephardic people put the mezuzahs straight. Okay, Ashkenazi people put them up at an angle. The question is, what is that? Like, why is that? So there's an argument between Rashi and Tosfos, Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. Is a mezuzah supposed to be horizontal, or is a mezuzah supposed to be vertical? The Torah just says put a mezuzah on your doorpost. Okay, the Torah doesn't say how, what, when, where. So one opinion says you actually put the mezuzah on the doorpost horizontally. The other opinion says you put it vertically. So now the question is, what do you do? So Sfardim, interestingly, follow the opinion that says it's vertical. So they don't put it at an angle. We Ashkenazi Jews put it at an angle as a compromise between both opinions. If it's supposed to be flat or horizontal or vertical, so we put it at an angle. So it's interesting. So a lot of poskim ask, so it's neither opinion. One opinion says it's horizontal, one opinion says it's vertical. So then you put it at an angle, you have neither opinion. But they answer that it is because the angle is actually fulfilling both opinions. But what happens if you have a door frame that it's not wide enough to put the mezuzah at an angle? So then the din is you put it straight up, straight up and down like the Sephardim do, and you fulfill your obligation of a mezuzah. Now, where does the mezuzah go on the door frame? So, by the way, it's interesting. The proper way of doing it is actually by measuring the door frame. You have to measure the door frame from the floor to the lentil on top, and you put it at the bottom of the top third. So let's say, to make it easier, a doorway is 12 feet tall. So a third would be 4 feet. So you'd start from the top and you put it at the bottom, still above the 4 feet from the top, but you put it at the bottom of the top third. And a lot of times if you measure it, you'll see that the mezuzah should be lower than you think it is, not higher. So it's really the proper thing to do is measure the door post, see how big it is, and then you put it at the bottom of the top third. Okay, now what happens if you put it below that, under the top third? It's not good, and you have to actually change it, and you're gonna have to make a new mezuzah. Okay, now what happens if the doorway is very, very tall? You have, let's say, a 15-foot door frame. So now, by the way, now let me just say one more thing. It should not be within 3 inches of the lintel. Even if you put it not at the bottom of the top third, you put it in the middle of the top third, it's still kosher. You don't have to change it. If you put it below, then you have to you're going to have to change it and put it at the bottom of the top third. But what happens if somebody has a 15-foot door? Okay, that means the mezuzah is going to be over 10 feet from the ground. Because this 15-foot door, a third of it would be 5 feet from the top. Now, 5 feet from the top is also 10 feet high. So where do you put the mezuzah if the doorway is very, very tall? So many, many opinions hold in that case, you put it shoulder length. Of an average height person, you put it shoulder length. Our minig is we put it at the bottom of the top third regardless. And here there's a very interesting thing. Many years ago, at the beginning of the Rebbe's Nesius, I think it was after the Rebbe became Rebbe, they gave out a pamphlet with practical mitzvahs for kids. And over there, the Rebbe wrote it. And over there, it says that if the doorway is very tall, you put it at shoulder length. But the Rebbe Rashab said, and that's what they did in the Rebbe Rashab's house, you put it anyway at the bottom of the top third. So this Simi, and the Rebbe himself says also later, you put it the bottom of the top third, not at shoulder length. So the question, how do you reconcile these two things? It's possible, I don't know for sure, maybe that pamphlet was given out for kids. And because you can't put a mezuzah lower for a kid to kiss. Many parents make a mistake. A kid's bedroom, it's a little kid. They want the kid to kiss the mezuzah. So they'll put the mezuzah low enough that the kid should touch it. But then if it's below the top third, we said you're not going to the mitzvah. You're not fulfilling your obligation of putting the mezuzah there. So, but it could be because there are opinions that hold it shoulder length if it's very high. For the sake of kids, maybe the Rebbe then held for kids' sake that it should be shoulder length of an adult, that the kid should be able to stand on a stool and get, I don't know. Bottom line is that our custom, in Chabad, the custom is that we put the mezuzah, even if it's a very tall doorway, we still put it at the bottom of the top third. So now the question is, but you're not going to be able to kiss the mezuzah. Or if a kid's bedroom is going to be the mezuzah at the bottom, it's an 8-foot door, 10-foot door. A little kid is not going to be able to kiss the mezuzah. So be it. Let him get a stool and kiss it. The main inyan of a mezuzah is not that it should be kissed. The main inyan of a mezuzah is that it should be on the proper place. Then the custom is you kiss the mezuzah and so on. It was very interesting. They tell a story with the Baal Shem Tov, that whenever the Baal Shem Tov walked by a mezuzah, he kissed it. One time the Baal Shem Tov walked by a mezuzah, he touched it, but he didn't kiss it. So the students of the Baal Shem Tov were wondering, like, what happened? So they opened up the mezuzah to check it, and the taka wasn't kosher. But he realized why the Baal Shem Tov, instead of kissing the mezuzah, just touched it. But anybody that saw the Rebbe when he walked, the Rebbe never kissed the mezuzahs. The Rebbe touched the mezuzah with his right hand, but he never kissed it. Why? I don't know, but that's what the Rebbe did. When the Rebbe walked out of shul, he touched the mezuzah. In his room, he touched the mezuzah, but he never kissed it. But again, the main purpose of a mezuzah is that it should be put on the proper place. Okay, if you put it below the top third and it's below your shoulder length, it's not kosher. Again, if you put it within 3 inches of the lentil, you should take it off and put it properly without a bracha. Okay, that's now what happens if you have a doorway that the door shuts flush and then you don't have any place to put the mezuzah. So first of all, if there's place inside the door, inside the house already, you put it there. The mezuzah doesn't have to be outside the house. It has to be on the outside doorway. So let's say a door, a front door, any door for that matter, closes flush and there's no room, there's no mezuzah, there's no doorpost to put up a mezuzah, but there is inside the house, you put it inside the house. If anybody ever noticed, in 770, the front door's mezuzah is inside the door, not outside the door, because outside the door is flush with the wall. So when you open the door, the mezuzah is on the right side. That's not a problem. Now, if you have a sliding door, again, it depends where it's going to, and there's a lot of dinim tell you all about where to place the mezuzah. So again, the best thing is always to have somebody come to the house and check the place of the mezuzah and make sure that it's in the proper place. If somebody puts a mezuzah on the other side, the wrong side of the door, you're not yotze. But let's say you remodeled your house and now the door opened into the room. So you had the mezuzah on the right side. Then you remodeled the house and now the door opens out. So then you change the mezuzah. Just because it was like that before doesn't mean it's like that forever. So if the door opened in at one time, you put it on the right side going in. Then if you remodeled the door and put it on the other way, so then you have to put it the other way. You have to change it the opposite side. What happens if somebody has a swinging door that goes both ways? So you can't change the mezuzah from where it's supposed to be, because when you swing the door, it's going to knock off the mezuzah. The mezuzah still has to be on the right place. Sometimes, if that would happen, especially if they own the home, they would have to carve inside of the wall a place to put the mezuzah in, or change the swinging door. But if the swinging door is going to knock off the mezuzah, you can't say, okay, I'm going to put it on the other side because it's going to knock off the mezuzah on the other way. No, you can't do that. The mezuzah has to be on the proper side. If anything, change the door or cut into the wall and then you put the mezuzah in the wall. That's the proper way of doing it. Okay, now, the best thing is that a person should put up a mezuzah by themselves, not have somebody else put it up for them. There's a rule in the Gemara, mitzvah by yosim b'shluchi. It's preferable for a person to do a mitzvah by himself rather than through an agent. So if somebody can put up the mezuzah himself, that's what they should do. If not, you can ask somebody else to do it. If you can't, you don't know how. Many times women have a problem putting it up or whatever it is. Now, a woman is definitely allowed to put up a mezuzah because she's obligated a mezuzah. But it should be done for a non-Jew or a kid. A kid should not be putting up the mezuzah. And again, a lot of times a kid, he has his bedroom, it's his mezuzah, he wants to put up the mezuzah. The problem is, if the kid is not obligated a mitzvah, so if the kid is going to put up the mezuzah, it might not be kosher. So it's nice for the kid to want to do it, but again, the mezuzah still has to be kosher. But a woman could put up mezuzahs. I've heard many times, and I'll tell you the truth, I looked, I never found it. I don't know what the source is. If there's a source, fine, I take back. But some people say you can't put up a mezuzah at night. I haven't seen it anywhere. Again, if it says somewhere, it says there's more that I don't know than I do know. So if it says somewhere, fine. But I personally never saw it in halachos for them that talk about mezuzah that you shouldn't put up a mezuzah at night. Now, when a mezuzah is rolled, you go to the store, they roll it, they wrap it up for you, and they give it a mezuzah. The mezuzah has to be rolled. Okay, you have the parchment of the mezuzah. Okay, the parchment of the mezuzah, whatever length it is, width, has two parshias of the Shema. Shema and V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha and V'hayim Shemaya. Those are the two parshias of the Shema. When you roll the mezuzah, you roll it from the end to the beginning. You don't roll it from the beginning to the end. If you did, it's not good. You have to roll the mezuzah from the end to the beginning. The sefer usually does it because you have to be careful also. When you roll a mezuzah, you can't fold a mezuzah. Because if you fold a mezuzah, the line where you folded it on is going to crack the ink. The ink will fall off. And once the ink falls off, you don't have a kosher mezuzah. And then you can't fix, most times, if a mezuzah becomes non-kosher, you can't fix it. Tefillin and mezuzah have to be written what's called kisidron. They have to be written in order. So if you have a mistake, let's say you left out a letter, or a letter was not written correctly, or a letter rubbed out in a way that it's not kosher, you can't just fix that letter, because then what you're doing is you're writing it not in order, because you're fixing this letter, which is being written after the before and after. So then that's one of the reasons, by the way, why tefillin and mezuzahs are so expensive. Besides the fact, people always wonder, why are they so expensive? They scream, today, pardon the expression, you go to the store, buy a packet of toilet paper, it's almost as expensive as a mezuzah today. And food for sure, all these crazy things. But if you think about it, you have a piece of parchment. Parchment's not cheap, by the way. It has to be specially made for mezuzahs or tefillin. It has to be lishma. It has to be made properly. Parchment is very expensive. Then it takes the sefer a very long time to write a mezuzah, because he has to be very careful. Because if he makes a mistake after he writes something and then he realizes he made a mistake in an earlier letter, he can't fix it. So then he has to start all over again. Okay? And you figure it takes a few hours to write a mezuzah. Talking about a good mezuzah. It takes a few hours to write a mezuzah, plus the ink, the parchment, and everything else. And they have to make a living too. It's not that expensive. You think about it, it's not that expensive. It takes a sefer a few hours to write a mezuzah, and even let's say they'll charge us $150 for a mezuzah, and it takes them, let's say, 3 hours to write a mezuzah. That's not a lot of money. $50 an hour is not, especially today, it's not that much money. And they have to be very careful, because if you make one mistake, you can't always fix it. In a Sefer Torah, a Sefer Torah does not have to be written in sequence. So therefore, if you have a mistake in a letter, in a word, you can actually, if there's no Hashem's name in that word, you can actually, with a razor, they actually erase the ink of that word, and they rewrite it correctly. So Sefer Torah, this Gemara learns out halacha Mishum Sinai, that certain things have to be written considered in sequence, certain things don't need to be written in sequence. So Sefer Torah doesn't, Megillah doesn't. In fact, many Sofrim, the laws of Megillah is extremely lenient in the laws of writing, or what's a kosher Megillah Esther or not. In fact, many Sofrim, when they start writing, they're new. So the first thing they write is a Megillah, to sell, because halachically it's the easiest thing to write. But many Sofrim, will start from the end and go backwards. Why? There's a business thing. Because when you start writing, you're not as experienced as when you finish the Megillah. Now, when people want to buy a Megillah, right, you open it up to see if it's a nice writing. Okay, so where do you look usually? At the opening paragraph, at the opening columns. You look at the opening columns, you see, oh, it's a nice writing. So these guys write from the end. I'll tell you a little secret of it. I'm not a safist, so it doesn't matter. They write starting from the end. Then by the time they get to the beginning, their writing is much nicer because they've practiced already a lot, all the psukim of the Megillah. So because that, I'm just saying because the Megillah is a much easier, halachically is a much easier thing. Sefer Torah in that respect is easier than filling the mezuzahs because it doesn't have to be written in sequence. But mezuzah, if it's, it could be a problem. Okay, so you wrap it and then you put it into a covering. This is the minhag, by the way. Now, I've seen this, and it's not the custom to do it. I don't know yet if it's possible though. Many times people leave the mezuzah open. They don't roll it up. I've seen this once in a door. They have a mezuzah written up, not rolled up, but just hang it like that in a covering, in a case on the door. It's not the minhag. The minhag is up Kabbalah. Definitely you roll it up, and there's a shin of shin daled yud. The shin should be visible on the outside of the cloth. And okay. Now, what happens if you have a mezuzah case, but the mezuzah is bigger than the case? If a lot of times you meet people, by them the main thing is what the case looks like, not the inside mezuzah. So you're not allowed to cut the bottom of a mezuzah off to fit the case. You have to get a different mezuzah, a different case. You can't cut the bottom of a mezuzah that should fit into the place. They tell a story that a guy once built a massive mansion, and workers working in the house the whole time, and he bought them. We probably needed like 30, 40 mezuzahs. And one day he comes home and he sees the goyim put up all the mezuzahs. And the foreman said to him, oh, by the way, we took out the instructions from inside the mezuzah and we threw them out because we didn't need the instructions. And basically what they threw out all the mezuzahs and left the cases. It was a big loss of money. Is it true or not? I don't know, but it could have been true. Another thing is like this. When you put on mezuzahs, they have to be held firm. They have to hold firmly. Okay? Now, normally, what happened years ago, people would knock in nails or screw and put the mezuzah into the wall, and it held firmly. A lot of people today, for practical purposes, will use the double-edged tape. But you have to make sure, halachically, that it holds very, very well. What happens, let's say you use nails, and you knocked in both nails, and the bottom nail fell out. And now the mezuzah is only being held up. There's no tape, so it's only being held up by the top nail or screw. That's not kosher because it's not firmly in place. It can move around. It could swing. So you have to make sure that it doesn't take off, it doesn't fall off easily. There is a Yiddish minhag, by the way. If a mezuzah falls off, you give it into check before you put it back up. They say it might be a sign from Hashem that there's something, with the mezuzah that it fell down. So the minhag is, that's a Yiddish minhag, that they check it before they put it back up. Okay, another, if it's established on top, it's shaking at the bottom, it's not good. Again, if you use glue or you use double-edged tape, again, as long as it's firmly secured on the doorway and the doorpost, it's fine. Sometimes you have, believe it or not, sometimes you have a brick driveway. It's made out of brick that you actually have to figure out how to skip the mezuzah into the brick. Sometimes you have to drill with special screws for bricks and or metal or whatever. But people have to put up the mezuzah in the right way or the right place. Or if not, it's no good. Okay, next. Okay, the custom is also that the mezuzah that's in the bedroom should be, I think we mentioned this, should be double covered inside, wrapped up twice before you put it into the case. Unless if when you close the bedroom door, the mezuzah is on the outside. Then as long as the door is closed, it's not a problem. But for marital intimacy, if the mezuzah is inside the room when the door is closed and it's not double covered, but most mezuzahs today, they double cover anyway, but you have to make sure that the bedroom one is definitely double covered. Another interesting thing that could come up, and it's like this. When the Torah says the same thing applies by sukkah and by tzitzis and by mezuzah. There might be more cases also. The Torah says you have to make a schach, make a sukkah. Chag sukkah is ta'as halacha. You have to make the sukkah, which means the Gemara learns it has to be made and not automatically been made. Which means like this: when you build the sukkah, okay, you have the walls of the sukkah, and then on top you have the schach. What happens if somebody built a frame on top and put the schach on, and then they put up the walls? So that sukkah is not kosher because you didn't make the sukkah. The sukkah is the schach. The schach is what the Torah calls sukkah. So if you're going to put the schach on first, and then you're going to build walls, so then the sukkah became automatically made. Or the same thing you have with tzitzis. If somebody will make the tzitzis off the garment, and then they'll sew it onto the garment, it's again not kosher. Because the Torah says, Dilim ta'as halacha, you have to make it. The same thing is with a mezuzah. If somebody puts up a mezuzah in a way that it wasn't kosher, or the wall wasn't the kosher wall, and then they made the wall kosher, so then the mezuzah became made. You didn't put up a mezuzah on a room that needs a mezuzah. The mezuzah became put up afterwards, okay? So what happens if the mezuzah wasn't, the doorpost wasn't connected yet to the walls? Okay, so then it's not good. There are many very different cases. Or, okay, now one more thing I want to say before we go to Tanya, and that is as follows. When you put up a mezuzah, one second, let me just see something first. Okay, a doorway that has a door, you put up a mezuzah with a bracha. A doorway that doesn't have a door, you put up without a bracha. But the only time, so let's say you're putting up 10 mezuzahs at the same time. So you make one bracha for all the mezuzahs because you're putting them up at the same time. If you put them up at different times, then each time you have to make one bracha for all those mezuzahs you're putting up then. But then the din is that you have to put up, you make a bracha on the doorway that has a door, because then you make a bracha. One more thing, it's okay, it's one more minute. Sometimes you have, off a bedroom, you have a small enclave, what's it called? Enclave, a small little room off a big room with a very short doorway. Okay? What? What?
It's an alcove, Rabbi.
Alcove, thank you. Think we need Wisconsin to tell us teach us English. So, so then you have to measure, because sometimes it looks funny, but you can have a small door frame. So if it's not 36 inches high, you don't need a mezuzah. But if it's 36 inches high, you need a mezuzah. Now, sometimes if the whole doorway, let's say, is 40 inches, so it needs a mezuzah. So the mezuzah is going to be at the bottom of the top third. the mezuzah is going to be pretty low down. But if the room is 6 by 6, you need a mezuzah on that door because the doorway that is 36 inches high needs a mezuzah because it's 10 tefachim high. There's just interesting scenarios that come out. Okay, let's go to Tanya.